9:10, and I mentioned really important information for you if you're vegan. How can you trust the food you eat is what it says it is? So we've discovered several products labelled as vegan or plant-based that were analysed by experts in Kent and Hampshire actually contained milk or eggs. The Chartered Trading Standards Institute says people may have eaten products derived from an animal without realising. Kerry Nicol works on policy and campaigns for the Institute, and she told us earlier that she doesn't think it's the right thing to happen. Milk and eggs are two ingredients that can cause severe reactions, you see, in allergy sufferers. Ednan-Laperouse's daughter, you might remember, Natasha, died from a severe allergic reaction after eating a sandwich which contained sesame seeds. That was not listed on the packaging. Nadine, thank you so much for joining us on the Wake Up Call this morning. And again, we're so sorry for your loss. And I know you've been campaigning, haven't you, for more information. So this must be quite shocking for you to hear that some of the labelling isn't up to scratch.
Yes, I think it's really quite surprising, shocking for us as a family, but I think also very much for your listeners at large, particularly people who follow a vegan diet. I think anyone, the vast majority of the public would fully expect that something labelled vegan as a food would not contain any animal products. And I think the research, the testing highlighted, as you mentioned, has shown that is not at all the case. And therefore, that is really concerning, not just for vegan people who have a choice about what they want to eat, but particularly for people who are food allergic to dairy and eggs, who might assume there is no dairy and egg in the product because it says it's vegan, however, might end up having a very serious allergic reaction and be hospitalized and even potentially die from that.
You're right. There are many sides to this. For some people, it's an ethical choice. They're trying to follow it could be a healthy choice as well for them, according to their lifestyle. But for many, it could be life or death, as you say. There's no other way to put it. Why do you think this is happening? Because from what you've said in the past, food companies, they want to do the right thing by their customers.
Yes, I think it's fair to say, on the whole, most food businesses are definitely responsible. I think as we all would expect them to be, and they want to do the right thing. That's for sure. But actually, it's sometimes quite hard to do the right thing unless there are very strict guidelines on what is the right thing. And in this case, I think this really highlights what's essentially missing. And it's those guidelines. And the guidelines are simple. They need to actually be a set of guidelines issued by the government, or in effect government scientists via the Department of Environment or the Food Standards Agency, that are given to the food businesses around what should be permissible to be labelled vegan legally. And that's based on not just what we think and what we would like, but actually based on the science, that there should be, for example, absolutely no animal DNA in the product, or maybe there's a permissible amount that is so small that it's what you might call a trace amount, in which case that trace amount would probably be lower than what someone would react to or have an allergic reaction to if they were allergic to egg or dairy. In other words, it would still remain a sort of safe product, if you like. But that's what's missing. Essentially, it's sort of, you would call it regulation or guidelines from government to the food industry around vegan products.
Yeah, we spoke to Mark Rolfe from Kent Scientific Services in Kings Hill earlier on, and we were quite shocked to find out that there's no legal definition for vegan. Presumably, this research, it might be the springboard to change all of that, mightn't it?
Well, that, honestly, it would be amazing. And I know, take my hats off to the people who've done this testing, and yourselves for really reporting on it, because it is such an important national issue. And to put that in context, strangely enough, people might wonder how come this hasn't already been done. When for gluten, so people who have issues around gluten, such as celiacs or other issues around gluten, that actually has already been defined. So gluten has a threshold defined by government as to what is permissible. So in other words, if you're a food company and you want to say, I make gluten-free bread or gluten-free products, there are guidelines from government that state what is permissible and not permissible, and then that allows them to make products that are safe for gluten intolerant or allergic people. However, that's been going for a number of years, which is fantastic. And really, all that needs to happen is to replicate that for other foods. And that then would flow into the whole vegan debate, if you like, to give the parameters around what is vegan and what is not vegan.
Yes, and I suppose it might be a bit more thought needed by companies. They might have to look at how they wash their equipment machinery down, mightn't they, to make sure there's no cross-contamination. They might have to make sure that there's not even powdered milk used in the same room, because I learnt this morning that can spread without you really realising it. But again, presumably they know what's at stake and they're going to want to do the right thing.
Yes, I think it's really simple. I think for all of us in our own personal lives know that if you're given a measure, an absolute measure of, I don't know, getting 100 out of 100 or 90 out of 100 on a test, if you like, it's a bit like that for food production. Once you know what you've got to achieve in order to meet the standard, if you like, you set out your production lines, etc., accordingly. So in terms of vegan food production, let's say like a vegan ready-made meal, for example, it might be in that factory that in the morning they're making a non-vegan food, so it might have egg and milk in it on a production line, for example, and then in the afternoon they need to use that production line to make a vegan recipe, a vegan ready-made meal, for example, and they will know how exactly they need to wash down to what, if you like, level they need to wash down and cleanse all the machinery in order to pass or maintain the standard required by government for that product to be called vegan. And at the moment, in the absence of that, food industry is certainly doing the right thing, as they do, which is to wash down and clean down, etc., all the equipment. But maybe it's just not enough of it happening to meet what would be a standard that says there is, for example, no DNA of animals permissible or a very small amount. So that's why you've got in the food industry at the moment all sorts of things happening, because one company washes down in such and such a way and another in another way. But if there was a standard for which they could all benchmark across, then that would basically sort everything out. It's really that simple.
It sounds like that's where we're heading, and I know there are many people campaigning for that to happen. We'll keep across it here at the Wake Up Call. Nadeem, thank you so much for being with us this morning. One final question, probably my most important one, actually. How are you, and how's the family now?
Well, we're good. It's going to be 7 years soon since our daughter died in July 2016, age 15 years old. And for any family that might be listening, who's lost a child, they will recognize just how painful that is under any circumstances. And we are much the same in that way. We reminisce, we remember our child. We have down days, up days, but on the whole, we are fighting hard for the rights and changes necessary in the UK to better protect food allergic people. And there's 3 million of them. So it's almost the whole population of Wales, if you like, that are food allergic in the UK, and that's a lot of people that need help to live better lives, and that's what we focus on.
And your daughter is saving lives now, because Natasha's law is going to help so many people who have severe allergic reactions.
That's it. There are literally hundreds, if not billions, of packets of food sold every year from the top of Scotland to the southern tip of the UK in fast food or food to go type of places, many of them well-known brands that we all buy our food from. Those companies, under new legislation called Natasha's Law, for the last 2 years are required to list all the ingredients in the food that you're buying. And that makes life so much safer and easier, if you like, for food allergic people, because they can pick up a packet of food and read the entire ingredients and then make a safe decision for themselves whether they want to buy it or not, depending, of course, if they're allergic to one of the ingredients. But this takes a lot of the risk out and will reduce the number of people that die each year from simple food allergies.
So important, so important. Listen, thank you so much for being with us this morning, and I'm sure we'll talk again on this topic. Be interesting to see actually how the law does change in the light of the research that we've been discussing. Thank you. That's Nadine Ednan-Laperouse then, whose daughter, as you've heard, Natasha, died from a severe allergic reaction, now campaigning for better information for you and me. I'd love to know what you make of what you've heard this morning, and whether it makes you think, okay, I've got to think twice actually if I buy something that says it's vegan or plant-based. Now, we did approach the Food and Drink Federation, which represents many manufacturers, and we wanted them to come on the show this morning. We were told they were unavailable, but we have this government statement from DEFRA, which says food labels must not be misleading to ensure consumers have confidence in the food they're buying, which is why we require the presence of ingredients which may cause food allergies to be clearly highlighted on packaging. We will continue to work with businesses and consumers to ensure everyone can make safe and informed choices when purchasing items labelled as vegan or plant-based. Doesn't exactly address the issue at hand that we're talking about this morning, but I'm sure they will be aware of the research. And as I say, I'm sure there will be action taken on it. We'll be across it here on the Wake Up Call on BBC Radio Kent.